The sound of the heavy iron gate slamming shut still echoes in my ears to this day. At 9:15 on the morning of June 7th that year, the 15th minute after the exam papers were distributed, the huge iron grille at the school gate had completely locked in front of us. Outside the gate, Chloe wore a pair of high-heeled sandals she had spent half an hour choosing, crouching on the ground and screaming. Inside, the invigilators turned away coldly and walked toward the exam building. Chloe, crying, pulled out her phone and answered Helen's call. Her first words were not an apology, but a hysterical shout into the phone. "It's all Sophia's fault. She spent the entire morning in the bathroom hogging the mirror. I kept waiting for her, and that's why we were late." After hanging up, Chloe wiped away her tears and shot me a cold stare. That afternoon when I got home, the living room welcomed me with a cold ashtray and Helen's brutal slaps. David stood by the sofa, pointing at my nose and yelling, "You selfish animal. Your sister's grades are usually poor. You relied on this exam to turn things around, and you deliberately delayed to make her late." I opened my mouth to defend myself, pulling out the time you left the house from my phone. However, Chloe suddenly charged forward, pushing hard against my chest with both hands. My ankle twisted at the stairwell, and I toppled downward. The thundering crash of the back of my head hitting the floor tiles became the last sound I heard in my past life. Blood spread along the edge of my vision, and I saw David, Helen, and Chloe standing coldly in the top-floor corridor, not even reaching out to press 112 for emergency help. The extreme cold and suffocation instantly swallowed me. Bang! A crisp alarm clock exploded in my ear. I suddenly opened my eyes, and the view was no longer a blood-spattered staircase, but a small bedroom with a countdown days remaining on the wall. The calendar on the wall clearly read, June 7th, the first day of the college entrance exam. The alarm clock showed 6:30 a.m. The sound of slippers on wooden floor came from the next room, followed by the creak of a door being opened. Helen pushed the door open and walked in, holding a brand new, neatly pressed dress in her hand, which she flung onto my bed. "Sophia, get up quickly. Today is the day you and Chloe take the entrance exams. First, go to the kitchen and heat the milk, and also iron the outfit Chloe will wear." After giving the orders, Helen turned and went to the room next door, calling loudly, "Chloe, honey, wake up. You can't sleep in today." I sat up, pulled the quilt aside, and stood in front of the mirror. The person in the mirror was all in good health, with no wounds on the back of the head, only the eye sockets slightly reddened. The next room was still open a crack. Chloe sat at the vanity, the floor scattered with 7 or 8 sets of clothes she had already taken off. She held a lipstick, carefully outlining her lips in the mirror, while the table was piled high with foundations, a curling iron, and various accessories. Helen stood to one side, holding a pair of high-heeled sandals in her hand, patiently helping her choose matching footwear. "Chloe, you've changed 4 outfits already." I walked to the door, raised my hand to knock on the doorframe, and spoke coldly. "It's 6:45 in the morning. From home to Ijong exam site, peak hour taxi takes at least 40 minutes, and the bus takes an hour. If you don't leave now, you won't make it to the exam site before 8:30. Chloe didn't even turn her head, continuing to curl her bangs with a curling iron, saying impatiently, "Why are you in such a hurry, Sophia? The exam starts at 8:30 and the test papers aren't handed out until 9 o'clock. You're always so nervously anxious, making it seem like the sky will fall if we're 5 minutes late. Wait for me another half hour until I finish this hairstyle." Helen also turned her head, glared at me, and yelled loudly, "Sophia, as a sister, how can you have so little patience? Chloe is under so much exam pressure, don't you know? Let her go at her own pace. If she's in a good mood from her makeup, she'll perform better in the exam. Why are you nagging on the sidelines? You really don't understand." I pointed at the wall clock. "Peak hour road closures start at 7:30. Today there are 30,000 exam takers in the city traveling at the same time. If we don't leave now, the road will be jammed." Chloe scoffed, slammed the curling iron on the table, turned around and pointed at me. "Sophia, are you deliberately picking a fight with me? I need an hour every morning to do my makeup and pick clothes. Did you know that on the first day? You're mentally weak and can't face the exam. So stop using traffic as an excuse to disgust me. If you're in a hurry, run there yourself. Helen immediately stood in front of Chloe to shield her, pointing at my nose and scolding. Listen to what your sister is saying. Stop spreading anxiety here. If you dare to leave your sister behind today and walk out, I'll tear your admission ticket to shreds. You two must go out together and enter the exam room together. I did not utter another word of persuasion. I stepped back, reached out, and opened the living room door. Chloe, from the mirror, saw my action and screamed immediately. What are you doing? Are you really leaving? I haven't picked my clothes yet. I took a pair of flat sneakers from the shoe cabinet, put them on, and securely tied the transparent exam bag around my wrist. I turned around and looked at the two people in the living room. One last time. Chloe, are you leaving now or not? My voice was flat. Chloe leaned back on the chair, rolled her eyes, folded her arms. I'm not leaving. My mask isn't even finished, and the makeup's only half done. If you want to go, go, see how Mom and Dad deal with you when they get back. Helen rushed forward a few steps, trying to grab my arm. You stop right there. Leave the keys. Go heat the milk in the kitchen. I sidestepped Helen's outstretched fingers. In Helen's astonished gaze, I took a step out of the house and yanked my hand back with force. Bang! The security door slammed shut in front of them. Immediately afterward, I pulled out the key, inserted it into the keyhole, gave 3 quick clockwise turns, and locked the security door from the outside. Inside, the sound of the doorknob being violently shaken and the frantic screaming of Chloe and Helen through the iron door filled the air. Sophia! How dare you lock the door? Open the door for me. I put away the keys, turned around, and hurried down the stairs. 7:01 in the morning. The moment I stepped out of the unit building's main door, the crisp air rushed into my lungs, sweeping away the bloody stench of the past life that had choked me before. I moved with no hesitation straight toward the bus stop at the community gate. The morning rush vehicles had already begun to converge slowly on the main road, and the taxi booking app showed more than 40 people in line ahead. In the past life, Chloe had to wait until 8:10 to get a car to take her in order to ride the so-called lucky luxury business car, and as a result she was stuck at the Liberation Road overpass 3 kilometers from the examination site. I pulled out my phone and decisively boarded the 201 bus that had long since arrived at the stop. The bus rode along the high school green signal bus lane, all the way smoothly. At 7:40, the bus smoothly stopped at the entrance of Ijong examination site. The gate was already crowded with parents dropping off their children and volunteers in red vests, and the air was filled with a tense yet orderly atmosphere. The security barriers had long been set up, and several on-duty traffic police were holding walkie-talkies to maintain order. I found a stone bench in the shade of a tree and sat down, taking out an exam preparation formula handbook and quietly reviewing. At 8 o'clock sharp, my phone began to vibrate wildly. The name David flashed on the screen. I swiped to answer and casually pressed the record button. Sophia! You animal! What do you mean by locking your mother and Chloe at home? David's furious roar nearly blasted through the phone's speakers. Chloe hasn't even finished her makeup. She hasn't changed clothes. And you've locked her in the house and she can't go out. Do you want to kill your sister? I held the phone, my tone as calm as if I were discussing today's weather. I reminded her at 6:45. She said even if we were 5 minutes late, the sky wouldn't fall, and she told me to go ahead first. I locked the door because I was afraid a thief would get in. The key is under the base of the vase on top of the shoe cabinet. You can look for a spare key yourselves. You, David sneezed with anger. Now you get back here and bring the key. Chloe was so anxious at home that she smashed a cup. And her ankle is cut. You must come back and take full responsibility. 8:02. I interrupted him coldly. There are 57 minutes left before the exam site closes. It takes 40 minutes to come from home. If you keep wasting time on calls and scolding me, Chloe won't be able to come today. I hung up and immediately added David's and Helen's numbers to my blacklist. Time ticked away, second by second. At 8:20, the examination site's broadcast sounded, and the gates officially opened as candidates began lining up for facial recognition and security checks. I stored my phone in the designated belongings area outside the exam room and followed the orderly flow through the security checkpoint. Arriving at exam room 03 on the third floor, I found my seat by the window, with a view that allowed me to overlook the entire gate. At 8:45, the proctoring teachers inside the exam room began to read the exam rolls and distribute the answer sheets. Outside the window, the originally clear sky suddenly turned overcast, and a torrential rainstorm descended without warning. The heavy rain pounded against the glass, making a crackling racket. At 8:52, the main road direction carried the sharp, urgent screech of a taxi's brakes. I slightly turned my head and looked down through the third-floor glass window. A taxi stopped outside the security line. The door was forcefully opened, and Chloe, wearing a soaking wet halterneck dress and those heeled sandals, stumbled out of the car. Because she ran so quickly, her ankle twisted in a puddle, and she fell hard into the muddy water. Helen, holding an umbrella, followed in her wake, running over and pulling her to her feet in a flustered hurry. Chloe's hair was all disheveled, and the carefully groomed makeup on her face was washed away by rain and mud, the black mascara running into two dirty dark streaks that slid down her cheeks, looking ridiculous and laughable. She clenched the water-soaked exam admission bag in her hand, lifted the hem of her dress, and hobbled toward the school gate in a wild rush. "Let me in! I'm a candidate! I'm a candidate from exam room 03. Chloe's shrill cries pierced through the rain. However, the security guard at the gate and the traffic police stretched out their arms to block her outside the barrier. "Student, security check has ended. It is now 8:55. According to the rules, late entrants after 8:15 are not allowed to enter, and the test papers are about to be distributed." The guard stood with arms extended, unyielding. "I'm not late. There was a traffic jam on the way. Someone locked the gates on purpose to harm me." Chloe pressed forward frantically, tugging at the guard's sleeve, screaming hysterically, "Let me in! I finished my makeup and went out, and there was a jam. This isn't my fault. Sophia is inside. You should call Sophia out to explain to me." Helen also rushed up, hitting the guard with a rain umbrella. "You lousy guards. Do you even have brains? My daughter is going to college. She was late because she had to wait for that scheming sister of hers. If you don't let her in, I'll die right here at your school gate today." A few traffic police immediately moved in, pressing the hysterical mother and daughter forcefully outside the barrier. 8:57, the huge iron gate, with the roaring of mechanical gears, slowly closed. With a resounding click, the heavy iron lock was slammed shut by the guards. At that moment, through the rain and the third-floor window, I clearly saw Chloe, like a water snake deprived of its bones, slumped outside the iron door in the downpour. She gripped the bars with both hands, opened her mouth wide, and let out a series of silent screams. Mud and tears smeared her face, making her utterly miserable. Helen, meanwhile, sat on the ground, slapping her thighs and cursing the sky. "Please, candidate, calm your mind. We are now checking the test papers. Barcodes." The invigilator's crisp voice rang through the classroom. I withdrew my gaze and turned my head, gently twisting the black signature pen in my hand. The first subject, Chinese. The bell for the first Chinese test echoed through the quiet exam room. I looked down at the test paper. The essay topic was about choice and fate. In a past life, due to a collapse, argument, and chaos on that morning, my mind went blank in the exam hall, and I scored only a little over 80 in Chinese, which directly ruined my hopes of rushing into a top university. Now, having experienced life and death in reincarnation, my heart is as calm as water. The pencil scratched softly on the paper, and the handwriting flowed like clouds in water, quickly filling the answer sheet. Every line of classical poetry recitation, every modern text comprehension, and even the structure and intent of the essay were perfectly flawless. My previously dull brain, worn down by energy drain and countless mental torments in a former life, was extraordinarily clear this moment. The 2.5 hours of exam time passed in the blink of an eye. When the submission bell rang, I capped my pen, neatly put away my stationery in a transparent bag, and followed the crowd out of the exam hall. The rain outside had stopped, and the air was filled with the fresh scent of soil. In front of the gate of No. 1 High School, reporters and parents were already crowded. Although the heavy rain had just ceased, Gossip and bustle never miss a beat. A few self-media bloggers and parents with mobile phones gathered nearby, debating furiously. Have you heard? Before the first exam started, a girl at the door rolled around on the ground, claiming she was late because her sister locked the door, making a scene. I saw it too. The mother and daughter cried and fought in the mud. Security couldn't stop them. And what happened? The exam hall door still shut, and there wasn't even a seat left. I passed calmly by them and walked straight to the external bus station. However, trouble always loves to seek you out. Just as I turned the street corner, a red sedan suddenly screeched to a halt in front of me. The door swung open, and Helen charged out with a savage look, her eyes red with resentment. Her clothes bore muddy stains from the morning at the school gate. Her hair was a mess, looking like a madwoman. Sophia! You dead bad omen! Helen screamed and pounced, raising her hand to slap my face. I was prepared, sidestepped her assault, and with a reversed motion coolly grabbed her wrist. What do you want to do? Beat a test taker in the street? Do you want your family to be more ashamed? Or do you want to come in with your daughter? The cold glare in my eyes briefly sobered Helen, who then struggled even more violently. How can you still talk like that? If you hadn't locked the door, Chloe wouldn't have even been able to enter the exam room. She's crying herself into a faint now, and you've ruined her life forever. How can a sister be so cruel? You must go to the Education Bureau with me now. Kneel before the leadership and explain clearly that you were joking. Beg them to issue a makeup exam permit so Chloe can sit the afternoon math test. The bystanders nearby, drawn by the commotion, immediately gathered around, pointing and gossiping. Then a black private car stopped by the roadside. The door opened, and several neighbors from the same community who were usually friendly with Helen stepped out. One auntie sneered. Oh, isn't that Sophia? So you really locked your own sister at home to stop her from taking the exam? I'm telling you, Sophia, even if you usually have arguments with your sister, the college entrance exam is a big deal. How could you be so cruel as to ruin your sister's future? Your heart is too vile. Helen, seeing someone backing her up, cried out even more piteously. Everyone, judge for yourselves. She takes her exam, but locks her sister at home, making my daughter get drenched in the rain and fall, missing the first exam. This kid has been selfish since childhood, and now she's going to ruin her own sister's future too. The onlookers, not knowing the full truth, looked at me with strange and accusing eyes. How can young people today be so heartless? That's right. A tiger would not eat its cubs. This sister is too calculating. Facing the avalanche of accusations around me, I remained calm, and I didn't cry and wail like in my previous life with people unable to defend themselves with words. I slowly pulled up my phone from my pocket and unlocked the screen. I looked at Helen, and a cold smile curved at the corner of my mouth. Mom, the neighbors are all here. Since you insist on making a big scene on the street, then we'll settle the accounts from that year and today piece by piece in the sunlight. I opened the recording file and directly pressed the speaker button. The conversation from 6:45 in the morning immediately came through clearly from the phone. Every morning I need an hour to do my makeup and pick clothes. Do you know this on your first day? You yourself lack the inner strength to face the college entrance exam. Stop using traffic as an excuse to disgust me. If you're in a hurry, go run yourself. Sophia, you spread anxiety every day. If today you dare to abandon your sister and walk away, I'll tear up your admission ticket. After the recording finished, the originally accusatory voices around me instantly quieted. The neighbor aunt's face alternated red and white, awkwardly pulling at the corner of her mouth. This recording. I swept the crowd of onlookers with my gaze, speaking softly but every word clearly reaching everyone's ears. Uncles and aunts, please listen clearly. At 6:45 in the morning, more than an hour before the exam site closes, I kindly reminded her to go out. She refused and even threatened to tear up my national ID or cause other disturbances to delay me, so that we would both lose eligibility for the college entrance exam. I turned my head and fixed Helen's pale face with a deadly stare. Mom, do you dare swear in front of everyone that last night and this morning you both planned to make me late? To give the place and the family's subsidy slot entirely to precious Chloe? Do you dare let the police check the family surveillance? Helen's face instantly paled. She opened her mouth but couldn't say a single word. Helen's face turned completely pale in an instant. She opened her mouth, ready with a barrage of curses and tears, but everything got stuck in her throat as her eyes revealed, for the first time, genuine fear and panic. She never imagined that Sophia, who had always been docile and completely dominated by the mother-daughter duo, would not only dare to openly resist but also had such a deadly recording in her possession. After hearing the recording, the neighbors and passers-by changed their stares at Helen entirely. The elder woman who had just been joining in support awkwardly withdrew her hand, silently stepping back half a foot, muttering, "Well, how can a mother and younger daughter be so unreasonable?" The elder sister kindly woke her up, yet got blamed instead, and the younger one even tried to rip up her exam ticket. Is that really a loving mother? Exactly. It's raining heavily, but she wasn't rushing, blaming others for locking the door. Isn't that completely unreasonable? As murmurs of and accusations gradually rose all around, Helen angrily pointed at me, her voice becoming sharp and breaking. "Sophia, you ingrate who betrays your own family. Stop twisting my words out of context. Is your satisfaction enough now that your sister's college entrance exam is ruined? Do you really want me to go back and tell David so he breaks your legs?" "Break my legs?" I sneered coldly and stepped forward threateningly. "Mom, from childhood to adulthood, you've bestowed all resources, all pocket money, even brain-nourishing supplements before exams, unconditionally toward Chloe. The living expenses I earn from part-time jobs every day, more than half of it must still be taken by you to subsidize Chloe's luxury purchases. During my 3 years of high school, I ate only pickled vegetables, wore clothes she threw away. So now, even my right to college admission based on my own ability is considered betrayal?" My voice was crisp and powerful, each word like a loud slap across Helen's face. The crowd watching erupted completely. At a time when favoritism and gender imbalance drew widespread attention, this drama of biased parents exploiting the elder daughter to serve the younger one instantly ignited everyone's sense of justice. My goodness. So this is how they treated the eldest daughter all along. This mother is far too biased. No wonder the elder daughter decided to leave on her own. Anyone would run away. Seeing the tides turn completely, with all accusations now falling directly upon herself, Helen trembled with fury. She attempted to rush forward and grab my hair, but as soon as she raised her hand, several young people filled with righteous anger stepped in front of me with furrowed brows. "Miss, that's enough. In broad daylight, you want to assault someone? The elder sister still needs to go back and review math after the exam. Stop causing trouble." "Exactly. Unable to educate your own daughter properly. Still daring to blame others here? Just go away and stop embarrassing yourself." Seeing the dense crowd around her, and feeling those scornful gazes, Helen knew she would gain nothing from today's street incident, only completely losing her last shred of dignity. With gritted teeth and glaring at me, she threatened, "Fine, Sophia, you're ruthless enough. Just wait, after the college entrance exam ends and I return home. See how your dad and I will deal with you, this rebellious daughter." Having left this empty threat behind, Helen sheepishly crawled back into the red sedan, slammed the door, and hastily fled the scene. I remained standing in place, watching the car disappear, my expression utterly calm. Regaining composure, I turned and walked back to the small inn I rented near school. The afternoon math exam was truly the decisive showdown that would create the real gap. In my previous life, my math exam featured one extremely tricky final question, something I had highlighted during review prep. But due to that morning's incident and my injuries, my mental state collapsed completely, and I managed only a score of just over 90. This time, though, I was at the peak of my condition. Entering the exam room, I sit down and hand in the papers. The moment I open the math test, my eyes quickly sweep over the final problem. The classic models and solution ideas I had drilled countless times before the exam instantly weave into a web in my mind. Without the slightest hesitation, I pick up my pen and swiftly work through the draft paper. Throughout the whole test, I am like a emotionless problem-solving machine, clear in my thinking, rigorous in my steps. When the bell to hand in the papers rings again, my answer sheet is filled to the brim. The 2 tough exams on the first day of the Gaokao have fallen behind in the sunset, but the whole city's discussion about this uproar has just begun to boil. That night, on campus forums and local social platforms, a live video filmed by a bystander was rapidly shared. In the video, Helen hysterically accuses me on the street, while I calmly release the recording, tearing apart the ugly mask of a biased family that has persisted for years in public. The comment section was flooded by netizens. Damn! This mom is simply on point. The younger daughter can't get into school, and the older sister is supposed to suffer the consequences? The line in the recording, "Watch me not tear up your admission ticket," is basically a crime teaser. Support the older daughter. Don't compromise with this kind of original family. Feeling for Sophia. To be able to perform steadily in such an environment in Gaokao, she's definitely ruthless. The online storm grew louder. While at home, an unprecedented downward pressure was building. I returned to a small hotel near the exam venue, not choosing to go back to that suffocating home. As soon as I stepped in, my phone was buzzing wildly again. Although I had blocked David and Helen's numbers, the relatives group chat had already exploded. My eldest uncle, aunts, cousins' voices and messages kept arriving, all accusing me of being cruel, disregarding family ties, making the home chaotic. Sophia, you're so irresponsible. Chloe has locked herself in the room without eating or drinking. Your mom's eyes are nearly blind from crying. You'd better come back and bow your head to apologize. My cousin sent a 60-second voice message, full of moral judgment from a superior standpoint. I sneered and opened the group chat, posting a 3-minute-long text. In it, I detailed how, from childhood, my parents had deducted my living expenses and tilted all educational resources toward Chloe, even listing the chain of evidence for every time Chloe deliberately destroyed my study materials. Finally, I mentioned all the elders. If you think I did something wrong, you can always take Chloe to your home to feed her. Have her endure her unreasonable tantrums. If you don't have the ability, shut your mouths and stop playing the moral high ground here. The group fell into a deathly silence. Those relatives who had planned to go on at length accusing me, after seeing those shocking facts and grim bill details, no longer dared to reply anymore. In the end, eldest uncle quietly withdrew a voice message, and Aunt One simply left the group chat. The world became finally quiet. I put down my phone, took a hot shower, and swept away the day's fatigue. Sitting at the desk, I opened the review materials for general science, preparing for the final gap check for the most crucial science subject the next day. In my previous life's general science exam, under extreme anxiety and physical pain, I failed to answer one large physics problem, and I lost tens of points on a chemistry experiment due to misreading the conditions. The despair of watching the score slip through my fingers is still vivid. In this life, my heart is as steady as a rock. The next morning, 6:30, I woke up on time, tidied up my belongings, took the clear stationery bag and documents, and walked out of the small hotel alone. The air on the street carried the warmth unique to summer. When I reached the entrance of the first affiliated high school's exam venue again, the surrounding examinees and parents recognized me. Their eyes were no longer filled with doubt but with awe and curiosity. After all, yesterday's street confrontation video had trended on local hot searches the whole night, and everyone already knew that this girl in school uniform not only excelled in academics but also carried a strong-willed demeanor. I kept my gaze forward, proceeding with security, verification, and entry in smooth, seamless steps. At 9 o'clock sharp, the science comprehensive exam formally began. The moment I opened the test paper, a slight smile curved at the corner of my mouth. The physics problem of the very first major exam was precisely the classic electromagnetic induction model I had focused on reinforcing during my review last night. The chemistry and biology experimental inquiry questions were logically tight and tightly interlinked. Without a trace of hesitation or panic, the tip of my pen traced across the test paper with a rustling sound, like a grand and stirring symphony. I transformed all the regrets, all the pain, all the unwillingness from my past life into a series of precise formulas and perfect answers under my pen. When the bell signaling the end of the last English exam in the afternoon rang, the entire teaching building erupted in thunderous cheers. The Gaokao was over. I stepped out of the school gate, the sunset dragging my shadow very long. The surrounding examinees clustered in twos and threes, hugging each other to celebrate liberation. And I stood at the edge of the crowd, appearing unusually calm. I knew that my life's major exam had just finished, but the ultimate judgment for that entire group was only just beginning. Back home, the security door's password had already been reset. I stood outside the door, calmly knocking. A few seconds later, there was a creak as the door was pulled open from inside. David stood inside, his face pale as death, his eyes reddened, his hair a bird's nest. He looked at me, his chest heaving violently, clearly seething with anger. In the living room on the sofa, Helen was holding a pillow and sobbing softly. When she heard the noise, she looked up, her eyes shooting with anger that seemed ready to devour me. "You dare come back!" David raised his right hand, a whistling wind accompanying it as he slapped me hard across the face. I did not dodge. Instead, I met his strike with a cold, icy gaze. Just before the slap landed, I seized his wrist with a precise grip, like iron pincers. David was stunned. He had never expected that his eldest daughter, who he always used to strike at will, would dare to stop him face to face. "Dad, if you can slap me down, do you believe that tomorrow morning, all the mainstream media in the city will know that the director of the City Finance Bureau, David, publicly abused an excellent student on the night after the Gaokao?" My voice was quiet, yet carried a chilling chill that could break bones. David's wrist throbbed in my grip, his face drained from blue to white, and he gritted his teeth and growled, "You demon! You've ruined your sister and threatened me here? Do you know Chloe hasn't eaten all day since yesterday and now has a high fever and was taken to the hospital? Are you satisfied? You've destroyed this whole family." "I destroyed it?" I sneered and released his hand, walking decisively into the living room, surveying the long-suffering home. "From the moment you tilted all resources unconditionally toward Chloe, from you tolerating her trampling on my dignity and taking away everything that was mine, this family has been rotten from top to bottom. I'm merely returning the sins you committed to you exactly as they are." "Shut up!" A hoarse, sharp voice came from the shadows in the corridor. Chloe appeared, wearing a wrinkled nightgown, her hair disheveled, her face as pale as paper, slowly moving out of the bedroom. Her eyes were red and swollen from crying, her legs wrapped in thick bandages from a fall in the heavy rain the day before, making her walk with a limp. She fixed her gaze on me with extreme malice and madness. "Sophia, it's all you. If you hadn't locked the door, if you hadn't humiliated me and Mom in front of everyone, how could I even get into the exam hall? All of my lifelong dreams have been ruined by you. You vicious bitch. Go to hell. Go to hell." Chloe roared hysterically, and with a frantic gesture, grabbed a glass cup from the coffee table and hurled it at my forehead with all her might. I turned slightly to the side. The glass cup whizzed past my ear, smashing heavily into the wall behind me, shattering into 1,000 pieces with a crash, hot water and glass splattering all over the floor. In my previous life, facing such a frenzied attack, I would probably have helplessly cried, then been pinned to the ground and mercilessly insulted and beaten. But now, looking at my younger sister whose face was twisted in fury and had completely lost control, I only found it utterly ridiculous. "I ruined your dream?" I turned around and slowly stepped toward Chloe. "Chloe, ask yourself sincerely, what exactly is your dream? Is it to sleep until noon every day? To treat the college entrance exam like a child's game? Or simply to step on my back and suck my blood as your due? You have never worked hard for the college entrance exam even for a single day. You refused to take your admission ticket, insisted you wouldn't leave, and left me to enter the examination hall first. You fell down in the heavy rain because you wore high heels unsuitable for running. Every choice you made was yours alone. How dare you shift all responsibility onto me? You're lying. You're lying." Chloe was struck at her weakest spot, screamed wildly, and lunged forward trying to tear at my hair. "I'll kill you. I'll take you down with me." At the exact moment she staggered right in front of me, I didn't dodge. Instead, I suddenly raised my right hand and delivered a shockingly swift, hard slap across her face. Slap! The crisp, loud sound of the slap instantly echoed through the living room. Chloe was sent staggering backwards several steps, collapsing helplessly onto the sofa. She clutched her left cheek, now badly swollen, utterly stunned. looking at me with complete disbelief. Seeing her youngest daughter struck, Helen let out a scream of anguish and rushed forward to protect Chloe. Sophia, are you out of your mind? You even dare hit your little sister? I'll fight you to the death. I coldly pulled my phone from my pocket, lit up the screen, and waved it before Helen's eyes. Mom, don't rush into fighting. Look at this. The screen clearly displayed an ongoing recording interface. Beneath the recording appeared a newly drafted complaint ready to be sent instantly to the Municipal Disciplinary Commission and the Education Bureau's supervisory team. The title clearly stated, "Anonymous Report about David's unauthorized transfer of vast assets using positional authority and appropriating state-designated educational subsidies." The moment David saw those words on the screen, his previously ferocious face turned deathly pale. His entire body seemed drained of strength. Staggering backward 2 steps, almost knocking over the TV cabinet behind him. Where did you? David's voice trembled uncontrollably, with beads of cold sweat immediately breaking out on his forehead. Where I got it from is irrelevant. I pocketed my phone and looked down at the terrified trio with cold superiority, my tone calm, as if pronouncing a death sentence. Dad, Mom, Chloe. You really thought the college entrance exam ending means everything is over? Your reckoning has only just begun. David stared fixedly at the blinking cursor on my phone screen, and my legs grew weak. He knew better than anyone how many unspeakable secrets he had beneath him. All these years, to let Chloe spend freely, buy all sorts of luxury goods, and maintain their vaunted upper-class vanity. He used his position at the Municipal Finance Bureau to secretly skim and embezzle funds that should have been allocated for basic school construction, and even illegally resold some affordable housing quotas. These things were usually kept tightly hidden, but if they truly fell into the hands of the Discipline Inspection Commission and the inspection teams, not only would his iron rice bowl be in danger of breaking, but the rest of his life would also be spent behind bars. Sophia, don't act impulsively. Let's talk about this. David's forehead beaded with cold sweat, and the swagger in his voice vanished in an instant, replaced by a nearly obsequious fear. Dad may have been strict with you, but he did raise you. If you really have these things in your hands, don't just go spreading them around. This would ruin you for life. Raised me? I sneered, turning off the phone screen with a flick, and my gaze cut across David's deathly pale face like a knife. Dad, ask yourself honestly, from childhood to now, how much fatherly love did you give me? I paid for tuition with my own scholarships and part-time jobs. When I was sick, I bore it at the clinic myself. Even right before the Gaokao, you kept draining my energy to help Chloe. And now you're talking about fatherly love? Isn't that disgusting? Sitting nearby, Helen, seeing David back down, immediately assumed a different face. She crawled off the sofa, throwing herself at my feet, reaching to grab my pant leg, but I sidestepped coldly. Helen could only sob and pound her chest and floor. Sophia, please, just hear me out. Your sister's college entrance exam has already been ruined. If your dad does anything else, our family will be totally finished. Your sister is still young. She can't be without a father, and she can't be without this family. She can't be without a family. What about me? I looked down on Helen with disdain as she cried and wailed. In the past life, when you pushed me down the stairs and I lay there with a head wound, blood everywhere, did you 3 show any pity? Did you ever give me a way out? Hearing the word staircase, David, Helen, and Chloe trembled all over, and a look of extreme fear and astonishment flashed in their eyes. They stared at me as if they'd seen a ghost. What are you talking about? What stairs? Whether I'm talking nonsense or not, I said coldly, you all know very well. 3 years ago's accident, and the poisoning scheme from the night before yesterday, your vile natures have rotten to the core. Today I've come back not to negotiate with you, but to declare the result. From a canvas bag, I pulled out a pre-prepared property division and severance of relationship agreement and slammed it down on the coffee table. First, this house is the old family home left by my grandparents back in the day. The property deed lists my name. You 3 must move out within 3 days, and you cannot take a single thing with you. Second, I have 3 backups of the evidence of David's corruption and embezzlement, stored at different law firms and in the cloud. If you dare to harass me in the future or spread even a single rumor online about me, these things will be immediately delivered to the Discipline Inspection Commission's desk. Third, from now on, I cut off all ties with you as a parasitic vampire family. Chloe, upon seeing the terms on the agreement, trembled with anger and lunged forward to tear the paper apart, screaming, "Why? This is our home. You white-eyed wolf. What right do you have to drive us out? I'll rip you apart." Before she could even touch the agreement, I reached behind and grabbed her wrist with precision, applying a tiny bit of force, causing Chloe to scream like a pig being slaughtered. What right? Just because the property title for this house only lists my name from start to finish. I leaned close to her ear, speaking in a private, hushed whisper that only the two of us could hear. Chloe, your good days are over. Without your parents' protection, without my blood you can suck on, I want to see how you'll survive in society in the future. You useless person who can't even get into college, only can make up and scream. I tore my hand away from hers, picked up the backpack on the table, and strode toward the door without looking back. From behind, I heard Helen's desperate wail, David's furious outburst, and Chloe's hysterical smashing of objects. But I did not stop, not even turning my head once. On the morning the Gaokao results were announced, the sun shone precisely on the window lattice. I sat in the rented little apartment, entered my exam number, and gently pressed the query button. The spinning loading icon on the webpage lasted less than 2 seconds, and the scores clearly jumped to the center of the screen. Chinese 138, Math 145, English 142, Science 288, total 713. I was the top science student in the province, a plainly unsurprising provincial top student. Almost at the exact moment the scores appeared, my phone began to vibrate wildly. Teachers from 2 top universities, Tsinghua and Peking University, almost simultaneously called, their words full of enthusiasm and sincerity. Meanwhile, the City Education Bureau and school leaders also sent congratulatory messages. Compared with the brilliant brilliance on my side, the world on the other side was collapsing at a visible speed. Because I stubbornly refused to retract the report and held solid evidence, the City Discipline Commission formally placed David under detention investigation the day after the Gaokao results were announced. After an overnight audit, David, taking advantage of his position, illicitly embezzled special education funds, and his huge bribe-related crime amounts led to his dismissal from public service and formal transfer to judicial authorities for prosecution. As for Helen and Chloe, losing David as their economic pillar and shelter, mother and daughter were completely rattled. The ownership of that old house's deed, due to a solid name attribution, had a court-issued enforcement notice slapped on the door. Helen, with Chloe nearly mentally collapsing, moved out that house they had lived in for more than 10 years overnight, temporarily renting a damp, dark underground room in an urban village. Chloe's dream of retaking the entrance exams was completely shattered. With no income, she could not even afford everyday cosmetics and clothes. She stayed in the damp underground room, unkempt and chaotic, sinking into severe anxiety and agitation. She began to resent Helen, and the mother and daughter fought loudly every day in the cramped underground room, even resorting to physical violence. The once intensely close but distorted family bond collapsed under the brutal realities of life. However, they did not plan to let me off easily. Upon learning that I refused all private mediation and would soon attend the citywide award ceremony as an outstanding graduate representative, Helen and Chloe, who were at their wits' end, actually bribed a few unscrupulous self-media marketing accounts to stage one last counterattack online. They paid to hire internet trolls to anonymously post on local forums and social platforms, spreading rumors that I abused my sister, did not recognize my parents, was cold-blooded, and even released secretly shot photos of my school apartment, intending to pin me on a moral pillar of shame through public opinion. Seeing those clowns' malicious defamatory posts on my phone, I was not the least bit flustered. I directly contacted the law firms that had long assisted me with legal matters. Without me having to appear in person, the firm's official WhatsApp account released a very stern lawyer's letter, not only making the entire evidentiary chain of Helen hiring trolls and invading privacy public but also filing criminal reports for their long-term abuse of the family wealth at that time. The online public opinion quickly performed a 180-degree reversal in the face of solid evidence. Those who had originally joined the crowd realized they were being used as instruments, and angrily turned their guns around, blasting Helen and Chloe across the entire internet blacklist. The marketing accounts, sensing danger, deleted posts and apologized overnight. This farce of a mother-daughter feud ended up giving them a resounding slap in the face. In mid-July, the provincial TV station's broadcasting hall was dazzling with lights. As the province's top science student in the Gaokao, I wore a well-tailored custom suit, walked with steady confidence onto the podium under the spotlight. In the audience sat outstanding students from across the province, professors from renowned schools, and reporters from major mainstream media. I stand in front of the microphone, my gaze clear and unwavering, as the audience erupts into thunderous, enduring applause. In a dark corner of a basement in the city's rural village, Chloe is shouting hysterically at the live broadcast on her phone screen, smashing the teacup in her hand against the screen, collapsing onto the muddy floor and crying piteously. And Helen stands nearby, ashen-faced, having completely lost all vitality. The cicadas of midsummer hum in the shade of the ginkgo trees on the university campus, carrying a touch of heat, yet unable to dispel the fresh scent of grass and leaves in the air. On campus, people swarm everywhere, bustling with life. Today is freshman move-in day, with red welcome banners hung along both sides of the main road. I pull a simple suitcase, wearing a clean white shirt and jeans, walking alone along the tree-lined asphalt of the campus. For years pass in the blink of an eye. The once provincial top science student is now a legendary double major in Peking University's computer science and finance departments. Not far behind me, a few juniors from my department are blushing as they argue about who will help me carry my luggage, and I laugh and politely decline. I am no longer the girl who had to maneuver every step for survival and dignity, living under a suffocating shadow. Every choice I make, every effort I put in, is building an unimaginably vast future for myself. After finishing the check-in procedures, I take the dormitory key and arrive at the girls' dormitory building. Just as I'm about to go upstairs, my phone vibrates in my pocket, a message from an unfamiliar number, but the content carries a strong stench of rot. Sophia, I am your mother. Please help your father. He's sick inside, can't eat or sleep well. He's about to go under. Also your sister. She's been in a daze every day, and we don't even have money to rent a place. We're really at our wits' end. You're so rich. Just feel sorry for us and transfer 500,000 to us, okay? Consider it a reward for all the years you fed and raised us. Reading the words on the screen, I can almost imagine where Helen is at this moment, in some dark corner, with unwashed hair, holding a borrowed phone, typing these coercive words. I feel neither anger nor any emotional fluctuation. I just find it a bit funny. I open the bank app, where the first pot of gold I earned through entrepreneurship and national scholarships lies quietly, enough for an average person to live without worry. But every penny of this money bears the crystallization of my rationality and sweat, and not a single cent could be donated to those vampires who once wanted to push me into an abyss. I tap gently on the screen and type back. First, the severance of all relations agreement and legal documents clearly state that we no longer have any legal obligation of support or maintenance. Second, what happened to David is deserved. Undergoing reform inside is his fate. Third, if you harass me in any way again, my legal team will immediately file lawsuits in court for grievous provocation and harassment, ensuring you have no way out. Be wise. I press send, then decisively add this number to my blacklist. I put away my phone, lift my head to look at the blue sky. Sunlight filters through the layered leaves, casting dappled light on the ground. In some dark basement in the city, or outside a cold detention center somewhere, those who once tried to drown me in favoritism, insults, scheming, and malice will be nailed to the bottom rungs of society by the very consequences they sowed, spending the rest of their lives in endless remorse and despair. And this is the ending they deserve. I turn around, stride forward with determined, light steps, and enter the dormitory door. The autumn air on the Kyoto University campus comes a bit stronger than elsewhere. When the first sycamore leaf was swept up by the cool breeze, my college life had already formally entered its second academic year. The windowside seat on the third floor of the library became my unshakable main position every day. The heavy professional books piled up like a small mountain, and the laptop screen kept flashing with dense code and complex financial model data. Now, not only do I maintain the top academic standing in the department, but the campus tech startup I founded with a few top students has also secured the first round of angel investment in the capital market. The title of National Exam Top Scorer back then may not be completely unique in this dragon-taming place of Kyoto University, but I am the first to successfully land my algorithm product and realize commercial value by sophomore year. My mentor has praised me more than once at academic seminars, saying I possess a calmness and ruthlessness after passing through countless voyages, a resilience that a flowering plant in a greenhouse would never have. Every night when dusk falls, the library's closing music plays, and I walk back to the dorm holding my documents, the streetlights stretching my shadow long. I often recall that summer from a few years ago, that same morning filled with heat and suffocation. If I hadn't decisively locked the anti-theft door, if I hadn't seen through the hypocrisy and calculation under that bedsheet on a cold rainy night, I might now be trapped in some dark, cramped corner, like in a previous life, burning myself to support a sister with no bottom line. But once the gears of fate are turned by one's own hands, there is no turning back. Just as I devote all my energy to study and the expansion of my career, those whom I have thoroughly abandoned in the mud pit of fate are, in an extremely ugly and ridiculous attitude, speeding toward their destined destruction. It was a Friday afternoon in late October. I was sitting in the startup incubation base conference room, listening to the technical partner report the latest server architecture upgrade plan. A stranger local landline number suddenly appeared on the desk's phone screen. I planned to hang up, but instinct told me that perhaps a spectacle had arrived. Pressing the answer button, a noisy and sharp quarrel came from the receiver, followed by Helen's hoarse, desperate, almost collapsing cry. "Sophia, please, I beg you, save your sister. She's really going to be forced to die." Helen's voice cut through the line, so shrill it stunned the eardrums. "Your father is inside and won't see us. All the relatives in our family have blocked us on WhatsApp. The basement we rent was flooded a few days ago because the pipes burst. Everything got soaked. And we don't even have a place to live. Chloe, she's been delusional every day, screaming on the roadside like a madwoman. She almost got hit by a car yesterday. You're her elder sister. How can you just watch her die?" Hearing the desperate plea from the other end of the line, there wasn't the slightest ripple in my heart. I even found it a bit ridiculous. "Mom, don't you have a bad memory?" I held the phone, my voice calm and devoid of warmth. 2 years ago, in that notarized agreement, we cut off the mother-daughter and guardian relationship legally. I am her enemy, not her savior. She became what she is today not because of me, but because you all spoiled her without limits since she was little, yet gave her no survival ability. It's useless to find me. Go to the law, or go find yourselves. You heartless white-eyed wolf. Seeing that begging was useless, Helen instantly tore off the disguise. For years she had been a shrew, and at this moment it fully exploded. She hysterically screamed and cursed on the other end of the phone. "Now you're the big boss, driving luxury cars, holding millions in investment. You watch us die. Doesn't your conscience ache? Your father stole and bribed for this family just to send you to school. Now you've climbed to the top. You kick us away. You won't die a good death. You'll pay for this." I sneered and didn't bother to hear another word. I hung up and permanently added this landline number to my blacklist. However, Helen and Chloe's madness far surpassed what I imagined. About a week later in the afternoon, as I was about to return to the school from the incubator, I had just reached the building entrance when several disheveled figures suddenly dashed out from the flower beds and lunged toward me. "Bitch! I'll beat you to death." With a scream of extreme rage, a crazy woman with long disheveled hair and emaciated bones waved her arms wildly toward me. I stepped back quickly, eyeing the scene coolly. A closer look revealed the person almost unrecognizable. That was Chloe. The designer dress she once wore with swagger had become filthy and wrinkled, her delicate makeup faded, face pale, eye sockets hollow, hair a mess like a chicken coop. Long-term malnutrition and mental breakdown gave her eyes a sickly crimson and craziness. Behind her walked Helen, equally bedraggled, clothes torn in several places, and she held a white banner reading "Ungrateful sister forces sister to die." The sudden farce instantly drew the attention of many passers-by and investors at the incubator building entrance. The The security guards reacted swiftly. Several sturdy young men rushed forward, pinning the mad Chloe to the ground. "Let go of me, you dogs! I came here to demand money from my sister. She earns so much and doesn't give to the family. She's a robber." Chloe struggled on the ground, hysterically crying out, attracting onlookers who pulled out their phones to discuss. Helen, seeing this, sat down on the ground, clapped her hands on her thighs, and cried loudly, "Everyone, come take a look! This is Beijing University's top student, a startup billionaire. She herself eats well, yet drives her mother and sister to beg on the streets, not even able to eat. Is there any sense of justice? Is there any law?" The passers-by, unaware of the truth, began to whisper and point at this scene. Faced with this sudden display of hooliganism, I did not panic as I did in the past, nor did I argue with them in anger. I simply straightened my shirt, calmly took a prepared document from my bag, and walked with composed steps to the Helen who had slumped to the ground. Looking down at her with a cold gaze, I said, "Mom, since you enjoy acting the onstage ingratitude in front of everyone, I don't mind cooperating with you to make the show even more dramatic." I flung the photocopy of the document in front of Helen's face. "Open your eyes and read clearly. This is an enforcement order issued by the City Intermediate People's Court half a month ago. The underground basement you've been renting for a long time, and the evidence of you bouncing IOUs around while defrauding friends and family, have all been filed by the public security authorities. As for Chloe, during this period she has been outside borrowing money from multiple alumni and investors in my name, not paying back, and even engaging in malicious defamation. I have also submitted all of this to the police." Upon hearing the words police and fraud, Helen, who had been throwing a tantrum just a moment before, turned shockingly pale as a sheet, and her cries abruptly stopped. Chloe, who had fallen to the ground, trembled violently, and a look of extreme fear appeared in her eyes. "And no way! You're lying! What gives you the right to call the police and arrest me? What gives me the right?" I sneered, my voice clearly reaching every bystander nearby. "Adult individuals must bear legal responsibility for every action they take. Do you think you can wander here, throw a tantrum, spread rumors and cause trouble, and take a single cent from me? Dream on." Just then, 2 police cars flashed blue and red lights and sped to the building entrance. Several uniformed officers quickly stepped out. It turned out that the moment I was intercepted just now, the security system of the incubation base had already alerted the authorities. Moreover, for habitual offenders who harass, instigate trouble, or are suspected of extortion, I had already instructed the law firm to file the complete evidentiary chain with the local police in advance. The lead officer flashed his badge and surveyed the surroundings. "We received a public report that there are individuals here suspected of instigating trouble and maliciously spreading rumors. Please have the relevant personnel accompany us back to the police station for investigation." As cold handcuffs were smoothly clamped onto Helen and Chloe's wrists, the mother and daughter finally panicked completely. Chloe cried loudly, her legs went weak, and she was almost dragged into the police car by the officers. Helen, pale as death, slumped on the ground, muttering something she had no more bravado for. The bystanders around them, seeing this, understood the truth. Those who had previously shown them sympathy immediately hissed. "Turns out they're 2 deadbeats and scammers. They got what they deserved. This big daughter is too rational. Dealing with such a vampiric family, we should use legal weapons. Support Sophia. Never compromise with the biological family." The police cars roared away from the scene, taking with them all the clamor and misery. I stood on the steps, watching the taillights disappear at the bustling street corner. The autumn wind brushed against my clothes, bringing an unprecedented sense of ease and contentment. In this life, with absolute rationality, wisdom, and decisiveness, I personally sent those who sought to drag me into the abyss to where they should go. No one will ever be able to rob me of my life again, and no one will ever be able to extinguish the light in my eyes. I turned around, walking with firm and light steps back into the office building. The brilliant life that belongs to me has only just begun to unfold its most magnificent chapter, and every future step will be starry with brilliance and a garden of blooming flowers.